This morning on Today's Money, your credit score, if you haven't checked it in a while, it might be lower than you think. When he checked, Phil Kraska discovered that he was the victim of identity theft, and Lynn Goldberg discovered that her credit card balances were too close to her credit limit. So we asked credit coach Jeannie Kelly to help fix their problems. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Jeannie, let's take these cases one by one. First, let's talk about Phil's case, because Phil basically wanted to refinance a mortgage and to get a lower interest rate, and he basically went to the bank and they checked his score and it was 621 with a number that he wasn't going to get a lower interest rate with. So what exactly happened there?
What happened is there was an account on his credit report that didn't belong to him. So he didn't know what to do. He reached out to me, and I coached him through the process. So what we had to do is send him to the police to get a police report. He also completed a fraud affidavit, and then we took those items to the credit card company that was reporting the information. And Phil had to keep calling them and be on top of it to make sure that it got corrected.
Oh, that sounds like a headache. Somebody steals your identity, and then you've got the headache of trying to fix it. How long did this take?
Almost a year.
Almost a year. Yeah. And you got the police report, you got all that stuff done, and then what happened to your credit rating? In other words, were you able to get the lower interest rate with Jeannie's help?
Yes, I was.
So what's your advice then to people who've endured this themselves, Jeannie, in terms of how not to suffer the consequences of identity theft?
Basically, to be aware. Be aware of looking at your credit reports at least once a year. Go directly to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion and look at what's being reported about you.
And you had no idea
before
that somebody even saw? So you only found out once you were trying to get the lower interest rate, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, so there you go, that's a good lesson. Was it worth the full year of all that back and forth paperwork?
Oh, God, no.
It wasn't worth it? But weren't you able to get a much better interest rate? In fact, let's take a look at what now that your credit score is now up to 734, let's compare your mortgage before and after, because your current mortgage is a 20-year at 6%. That was before, and then after, you've got a 15-year at 4.25%, and that's because of Jeannie's help. That's terrific.
Yeah.
So how happy are you about that?
I'm really happy.
It's got to be great for you to save all that money. Now, Lynn, let's talk about your story, because you first checked your credit report, and what did you find?
I found that there were addresses that I'd never lived at, and there were other names on my credit report.
What explains that? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
And how did that affect your credit score?
It was bringing it down, as well as it was concerning to me that there was misinformation out there on me.
So before your credit score was 676, and after all the help that Jeannie gave you, it's now 704. Is that right? And so now 676 is not a terrible score, Jeannie.
Absolutely not.
But how is it affecting Lynn?
Well, basically, Lynn wanted to be the best that she could be. And what we did is, after looking at her credit report, we suggested that she lowered her credit card balances. And once she did that, her score went into the 700s.
Let's talk about this, because I think this affects all of us. The lesson here is if we use the credit card and we charge more than, what, 20%?
I always say the magic number is 20%.
20% of what? Of what we're allowed?
Correct.
Okay, so if you charge regularly more than 20% of what you're allowed to charge, what happens to your credit score?
Your credit score will go down.
Who knows that? I mean, did you know that, Lynn?
Absolutely not.
So you didn't know that?
I did not.
And so now that you learned that, what did you do? What did you change?
Brought down my balances to within 20%.
And then how quickly did your credit score change?
Several months. Pretty quick.
Jeannie, I think this is something that would really be surprising to most people. So what's a takeaway from this?
The takeaway is definitely to be aware of your credit. And when you use credit, use it in a healthy manner. So keep your balances at 20% if you can, and be on top of what's being reported about you.
So, and especially maybe if you're about to buy a house, you can see yourself buying a house, say maybe in the spring, then you use that 3 or 4 month time period. Is that enough time, Jeannie, to do that?
It's a little tight, but at least 6 months before would be better.
Okay, to work on only charging at less than 20% of what you're allowed on your credit card. Hey, I learned something today. Thanks a lot, Lynn. Thank you so much, Phil. Thanks, Jeannie. Great advice this morning.